See, people don't understand when you commit to something that has a generalized purpose, but then you make it specific, you start attracting the other people around you. Okay, it may not be your current peer group. It may be a group of people that you've never even seen before. Then all of a sudden you are moving in a different circle. And that gives you even more purpose because you see how people who are serious do it.
Here's the big question. Are you ready to reach new limits?
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Rigging the Game, where we talk about how to get what you want on your terms without compromise. Now, speaking of getting what you want without compromise, I have my longtime mentor and friend, Randy Massengale, here to talk about perhaps our favorite topic, playing your game. And of course, I learned that concept from my guy over here, Randy. So I had to bring on the expert on playing your game today and talk about the process, what it takes to go on sort of a hero's journey of sorts in playing your game. So Randy, why don't you take it away for a moment? We'll just go back and forth.
Okay, well, Dan, you know I grew up in South Central Los Angeles.
I do know that.
And we played a lot of sports back then. And one of the sports that we played was basketball. And I ended up being a basketball player throughout high school and in college. But the thing that the old heads, which were the older people in the neighborhood, would always say is play your game. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what they were talking about when they first brought that up. But that idea that you do what you do uniquely, okay, that is what they want you to cultivate and what you want to be known for, is doing the thing that you do that is uniquely you, that you can do all the time. And so that idea of playing your game came through mainly the athletic world, and say, don't try to be like somebody else, okay? Don't try to be, in those days it was Elgin Baylor or Earl of Pearl Monroe or Walt Frazier or something. So don't try to be them, be the best version of you. And if you can be the best version of you, then anything is possible for you.
Now, when you say don't try to be like somebody else, that's something that sounds simple, but is not easy.
Oh.
Talk about that.
It is. That's probably the most difficult thing that somebody can tell you, is to be yourself.
Yeah.
Because everything you learned from somebody else. And so you've incorporated the things that they're doing. What they should be telling you is take the things that you see around you and synthesize those, and whatever comes out, that's your game. But they don't tell you that. What they tell you is just to play your game. So you've got to make up something brand new in order to be successful in whatever endeavor you're on. And that's why we teach these principles, because if you have the principles of playing your own game, then you can customize them to do the things that you need to do.
Now, somebody hears this, they hear, okay, I got to learn how to play my game. They take out their notepad and they like write that under their to-do list. They're like, okay, Wednesday next week, play my game. I'm going to figure that out. I set aside 45 minutes. Right. This is sort of the world of like that we live in, which is you learn a principle, a new concept, or whatever, and then you're like, okay, cool, got it. Got to check that off my list. But this is not a check it off your list. You're going to solve this problem next week when you set aside 45 minutes, is it?
Absolutely not. In fact, what most people don't understand is, how do you master new skills? How do you master a new direction? And they don't understand that it is a process. So just hearing it once or thinking that you've synthesized it and you're okay, very rarely can somebody do that and sustain it, especially under pressure. So what do you have to do? What do we have to do in order to get to playing our own game? Okay. And it starts with 3 very basic principles, and they build on each other. Okay. And so we talk about frequency. It's the first thing that you do is go do it, whatever it is. Frequency. The second thing is intensity, doing it the way that you do it. And then the third thing becomes purpose, doing it for a broader reason. And so as you go through frequency, intensity, and purpose, then you start discovering what is your game and how can I play my game at a world-class level. And I see most people give up way before they complete the process. They may do the first part, frequency, but then they don't develop this specialized version of who they are and how that is manifested out in the marketplace, in the world, and you know, anything that you're doing.
Now, you said frequency, intensity, purpose. You said purpose last, but I thought I was supposed to start with why.
Well, see, that's a big misnomer. People believe that they're supposed to have some huge purpose or huge dream or something like that, and then that's going to propel them to learn all the things they need to learn along the way and not give up on the euphoria that created that. What happens is that we've taught have a big goal, have a big dream, and then most people 3 years later, 2 years later, they're not even on that same subject. But if we taught frequency first, go out and get a feel for what you're doing by doing it a lot. And in that process, you start to change how you see yourself. And then you start to put parameters in place so that you can be the best you. And once that happens, now you say, okay, how do I go out and deploy this in the most important places in my life and in the lives of other people that I encounter? And so I like to say, I used to fashion myself as a runner. And before, when I didn't run at all, okay, it was just get out there and run, okay, and, run some more and run some more. And that was like the frequency part of that equation, just getting out and running. But once I start looking at what I could do, I said, let me sign up for a few races, okay. Now, it's a whole nother world. I got people out there, they've got on, these nice shorts or tights, and they've got, numbers, and they're all just duded up, and I'm running out there with my little Converse tennis shoes, thinking, okay, I guess I'm going to have to get into the character. But that was, now I've got to put my stamp on what it is that I'm trying to do. And that's the frequency, that's the intensity part, is when you put your stamp on what it is you're trying to do. The third part of that, and it comes later, and that is getting a broader purpose to explain why do I do it in the first place. And that once you master the why, that's when everything changes. Once you realize that by saying this is what I stand for, okay, I now want to run marathons, okay, I want to test my endurance beyond just going out and training. Then you start talking about, I want to get a good time in a marathon. Then pretty soon, I want to run marathons in different parts of the country, different parts of the world. Frequency, intensity, purpose.
The challenge, of course, with all of that is that it's hard work. And we live in an environment where we're looking for instant gratification. I can just take out my cell phone right now and I can search the internet. I can get a bunch of likes and a bunch of dopamine hits. And so what we're sharing is this is hard work. It takes time. And that, as you pointed out, Randy, the big why, that comes after a bunch of work. And so I think that's really important to kind of circle back to a little bit, because there's so much suffering in the world and there's so much suffering in entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
And folks go to these masterminds and things, and they're supposed to put together their vision boards and just know their why. And they often leave with all this anxiety because they don't know the answers to those questions, and they're supposed to cross it off a list.
Right.
I like that equation from Chip Conley. I wish I came up with it. Anxiety equals uncertainty times powerlessness. And so if you're sitting there and someone asks you, tell me your why, tell me your purpose, you don't know the answer to that. Now you've got all this uncertainty and you feel powerless. Like, what do I need to do? What are the solutions? What's the checklist? Right? And so understanding this framework is going to help you in two regards. One, is going to help you have less anxiety now trying to solve a problem that takes a long time to solve. And then the second piece is so much more life satisfaction when you're not trying to be someone you're not. You're playing into your strengths.
Well, the thing is, we try to teach it as an instant fix, instant vision, instant purpose. Okay. The
Yeah.
only thing that's not instant is the work itself. And if you teach people to have the expectation that you're going to do the work, period. That's before you get this grandiose dream or before you get this you know, customized approach. You're just going to go out and do. When I say do the work, it actually has a connotation that it's hard. But you may just be a person that likes jogging, okay, and that you just want to go out jogging. The problem isn't going out the first day. The problem is going back the next day. And then the next day. That's when it becomes hard, okay, is when you have to be consistent at something. But the work itself isn't hard. The consistency is hard. And once you master consistency, then you start looking, how do I customize it for my own use? What do I do? Do I go sign up for some 10Ks and some other things? You master that. Now you start talking about, what time do I get what I want to get? I want to improve my time. I want to knock 3-4 minutes off my you know, overall time in a 10K or something. And all of a sudden, you're hooked in. And now you're going to find other people. See, people don't understand. When you commit to something that has a generalized purpose, but then you make it specific, you start attracting the people, the other people around you. Okay, it may not be your current peer group. It may be a group of people that you've never even seen before, but you only met them when you went to run the 10K, and you saw them at the pub or somewhere afterwards, and say, who are these guys? Okay, then all of a sudden you are moving in a different circle, and that gives you even more purpose because you see how people who are serious do it.
There's a saying in the financial world that says consistency over accuracy. So again, consistency over accuracy. And there's a connection here to what you're talking about, because so many people who might watch this are never going to start because they have a proclivity towards needing to get it accurate or perfect.
Right.
And so there's a gut check of, do I just have a failure to launch because I spent too much time trying to get it right? What's the perfect way for me to figure out my game? So what would you have to say to those people who are trying to figure out the perfect, most accurate way of doing this?
It's tough because if you're watching this, you're probably an achiever of some sort. You probably have a greater propensity toward self-deprecation, being harder on yourself than you actually need to in order to be successful. The point of it is, I don't care what you look like when you get started. Just get started and don't stop, because you will refine the process as you are going forward. And so once that happens, now you are thinking about, how do I do this so that I get the most out of it? And then that starts that whole process of, why do I do it in the first place? And if you have that reversed, then you think, I should be an Olympic athlete, or I should be running in marathons all over the place because I got an idea to do that. That's just not it's not realistic. And I'm sorry that the quote personal help gurus and stuff are all kind of hooked on that, because everyone who actually listens and looks and understands it knows that you are talking about frequency, intensity, purpose, not purpose and then more purpose and then more purpose.
I've never asked you this before, so this is the perfect time to put you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the intersection between someone playing their game and trusting their intuition?
I don't think that there's a line of demarcation between those two things. Okay? If you believe in yourself, you will believe in your whole self, 360 degrees. And in fact, that means that your intuition is part of that. Mm-hmm. And so even though your intuition tells you where you want to start that journey, Okay. It also will tell you when you need a course correction, but you don't actually have all the data points. You haven't gone past those milestones. But it's important to understand that they're not mutually exclusive. It's like faith without works is dead. Okay? You have to have the faith to do it. Then you have to go and work it, and then things are going to happen.
Let's explore one of the tools that you use to help people play their game, which is thinking about their favorite sport or hobby. Can you walk through that methodology? What was the genesis of that? How'd you figure this out? And then how would one maybe apply it as a thought exercise and just starting to play more to their strengths, which is related to this idea of playing our game?
Absolutely. Well, a few years back, probably about 30 years ago, or
Just a
even
couple
more.
years, yeah.
Yeah, just a few years
couple.
back.
For you,
The
that's a
audience
couple
wasn't
years
born back then. Well, a few years back, I started reading biographies of people that were noteworthy, people that had done something in their lives that was significant. And I realized that if you went back and dissected what they did from probably the ages of all the way back to maybe 5 years old, all the way through their 21st year, and you saw what they were involved with, and invariably the thing that they did is the thing that they became famous for. And so I'll give you an example. When Sigmund Freud was a young child, he wrote down all his dreams. Okay. And that was just something that he did on an ongoing basis. Well, fast forward 30 years, he goes to medical school. He experiments with cocaine. His friend died because he gave him an overdose. I guess it wasn't illegal, at least in Austria at that time. And he did all these things because he wanted to become famous for something. But if you go 360 degrees, he goes right back to where he started, and that is understanding dreams. Okay? And you'll see that in athletes, you'll see that in politicians, you'll see it in anyone that has made a point, that's done something distinctive, that, as you say, play your game. If they're playing their game, they played it way before then. In fact, recently I've got exposure that might be even further away than when you were born. You may have played it back in a past life, which is really a trip. So I don't discount that anymore, because some people have a propensity to do some amazing things, and you can't see in their background where that started. But they do believe in, past lives and things like that. I'm saying, for most practical purposes, if you look between the ages of 5 and 15, you will see yourself in there as an apprentice, if you will, to what you finally become.
In assessing or helping someone play their game, how dangerous or not dangerous do you think labels are?
Labels are dangerous, okay? Because most of the time when you're doing something that's your game, it's a creative process where you're trying to expand on the knowledge that comes before you. And so if you just take a label and live it out, you're probably doing more of what's come before you than what's ahead of you. So I'm real cognizant not to put labels on people, to say, today you are expanding and that's good enough for me. And I'm hoping that if anybody's watching this, that's what they do.
So I got one final related question to all this. The people who I know who really, I would say, are playing their game, like yourself, they often characterize their path as non-linear, and the way that they think as non-linear. So for those out there who are watching this and they're trying to figure out their game, and they're back to like, okay, so I do frequency, and then I do intensity, and then I do purpose, and that's linear. How linear would you say this process is for someone to really know?
There may be 3 steps, but they're not linear. it may take you on the frequency side 4 or 5 years. And before a light comes on, and boom, now I'm doing more intensity. Now I'm doing this the way that I see myself doing it. And then after you get that, it may be a lightning bolt, and 2 months later you're saying, I'm going to go do this in Europe. I'm going to go do this on TV. I'm going to go do this and that. And you start to get the confidence. But that first part is what builds the confidence. That's the frequency. Okay. Once you have the intensity and you've mastered the intensity, now you can take it anywhere you want to go.
So let's wrap up. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
I just believe that we should teach this at the elementary school level, and we could learn a lot from young children who are actually doing this before we socialize them not to do it. So I wish we would get them back to what makes them feel like they are contributing and learning more about themselves, and then moving on to do some greater things. So,
well, I want to leave everyone with this. If you want to do something extraordinary, then you can't do the ordinary. And doing the ordinary is copying everyone else. So stop doing that and play your game.
Here's the big question. Are you ready to reach new limits? It's time to change your family tree and redefine industry. Enough with all the cliche cookie-cutter recommendations about finance, business, and life. You found the podcast to give you the tips you need to create the unconventional lifestyle and outcomes you've always wanted. It's time to build your own systems and play your own game. You're tapped in with the one and only Dan Nicholson, and this is Rigging the Game Podcast.